Hello! I hope this email finds you well in these strange and unprecedented times. Today I'm gonna do a bit of a video essay because there's no reason, I just want to. This video has been inspired by the fact that I recently reread Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Our Lord and Saviour, our Queen Sally Rooney, who honestly if I hear her name again I might throw up. Her name has just been everywhere recently, obviously because of normal people. But yeah, I'm not talking about normal people in this video. It's Conversations with Friends, so no normal people talk. Okay, I've just said it twice, so no more. But yes, I recently reread Conversations with Friends, and once I finished this, I read Exciting Times by Anisha Dolan, and then after that, I finished Show Them a Good Time by Nicola Flattery. So this video essay is inspired by these three books, right? The main thing about these three books that you need to know is that each of them was written by a young Irish woman. So Sally Rooney, Anisha Dolan and Nicola Flattery, and each of these books has as its main character or main characters a young Irish woman. So you can see the similarities, right? It's books written by young Irish women about young Irish women, and reading them in such quick succession it gave me a lot of thoughts, and I thought, why don't I share those thoughts, you know? Much to think about. Okay, yes, I'm just gonna get right into those thoughts then. But first of all, I'll give just a little overview of what these books are about so that you're kind of aware of what I'm talking about. So starting with the one that's most well known, which is obviously Conversations with Friends. We are told the story from the perspective of Frances, who is, when the book begins anyways, she is a 21-year-old student living in Dublin, and it's about her and her best friend Bobby, and it's about her and Bobby's relationship with a married couple, Nick and Melissa, and it essentially delves into the dynamics of relationships, specifically power dynamics and who has the power in a relationship, how can you tell who has the power, and things like that. Then Exciting Times by Anisha Dolan basically tells the story of Ava, who is a 22-year-old young Irish woman who is living in Hong Kong, and she's teaching English as a language teacher in Hong Kong. And it tells the story of her relationships with two people, Julian and Edith, and they are both romantic / sexual relationships and not very plot focused, a lot of character focus in this one. So that's what that one's about. And then Show Them a Good Time by Nicola Flattery, which is a collection of short stories. Honestly though, it should have just been like a novel, because even though there are multiple short stories in here, they all have the same theme and they all have pretty much the exact same main character, which is a young Irish woman, and all of the women are just disenfranchised with the world, and the short stories are about that. Again, not plot focused, not plot driven, all pretty much about the characters in here. So that's a general overview about what each of these books are about. So now that we have that, I want to just get into my thoughts. So it appears to me that each of these books has a pretty similar central aim, and that's to show young women essentially being disenfranchised by and with the world. And I think this disenfranchisement comes from, you know, a variety of sources, from late capitalism, from the liberating effects of feminism on women, and how young women are currently reacting to the fact that they now have a lot of opportunity available to them, more than women previously have throughout history, but that on the flip side of having that opportunity is how you can feel paralysed by choice, right? And so then you kind of start to feel disenfranchised, maybe despondent, all of that kind of thing. And that seems to me to be the aim of all of these stories to show how young women are currently operating in the modern world. But I think each of these books goes about that in a very different way, and some more successfully than others. Cough cough, Flattery, completely unsuccessful in my opinion, Rooney, very successful in my opinion, and then Dolan treading the line between the two. So that's what I'm going to delve into now. So for this first part, I'm going to just focus on the two books that I think are at the opposite ends of the scale, which was Rooney's Conversations and Flattery's Show Them a Good Time. For me, Flattery just did not do a good job of depicting young Irish women in the modern world. And I think the reason for that is that each of the characters in her short stories are all honestly just mean-spirited, they're acerbic, they're sly, and all of them were completely lacking in personality. And I think the reason that Flattery made her characters like this was to try and encapsulate the experience of millennials. But in reality, by giving the characters absolutely no personality, she just made it absolutely impossible to connect with them in any way. And I think Sally Rooney is on the opposite end from Nicole Flattery. And the reason that I think Rooney does it a lot better is because she actually allows you to form attachments to her characters, right? I think her characters can be very sly, they can be mean-spirited, but the difference between Flattery's writing and Rooney's writing is that Rooney actually allows you to understand why they're acting in a certain way, right? And I think a really good example of this is actually from the books themselves. So in Show Them a Good Time, the kind of central short story in here is called Abortion, a Love Story. It's the longest one, it's like in the middle, it's I suppose the anchor in this book, and honestly one of the worst stories in there. But in that story there are two main characters, and one of them is called Lucy. And in one of the passages, Lucy is simply asked where she's from. And in response, she says that she can't remember. That's her response. She can't remember where she's from. But if you contrast that with Conversations with Friends, Frances, the main character, is also asked where she's from at one stage. And in response, she says that she's from Dublin, her parents are from Ballina, it's all very normal, she has a backstory, she exists as a character, and yeah, just a sense of normality is developed around her. Whereas with Lucy, there's no sense of that normality. It's just, her just seemingly existing out of nowhere. And I think with this, Flattery is probably trying to develop a sense of displacement around Lucy, around this character, again, to show the effects of capitalism and feminism, whatever you want to say, but essentially to show how young females are living in Ireland, right? About how they kind of have no sense of home, no sense of place. But in doing that, I just feel like, who is this character? I have no idea how to even get a grip on her, to start to understand her. And instead, I read a line saying she can't remember where she's from, and I just scoff at her, right? So it makes no sense. You have to give us some sort of purchase in order to get into the story, and then we can start to understand why they have these feelings of displacement. And I think that's what Rooney does, and it's not what Flattery does. And therein lies the rub. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Okay, then the next point is essentially about levels of abstraction and relatability. And essentially my point here is that the more abstract you make a character, the less relatable the character becomes, right? And I think that's exactly what happens in Flattery's writing. I feel bad because I'm literally just like tearing this book to shreds, but I really didn't like it, so there you go. Yes, each of these short stories is so abstract. It's like abstract to the point of no return. I just love making up sayings, and I could not relate in a single way to any of her characters. I think a step down from Flattery then was Dolan with Exciting Times. I feel like there's no point showing the Kindle, but I'll do it again just to have something to hold. So there it is. exciting times. Dolan's writing is not actually that abstract at all, and in that way becomes a lot more relatable. And I actually think she does a very good job of like almost getting us to a level of like familiarity with her character. And I could understand a lot of the reasons why Ava, the main character, was acting where she was, specifically in the way in which she communicated with her love interests. But I feel like she didn't quite get to the level of relatability that she needed to get to. And so it was just slightly too abstract for me, right? And I think the reason for that was that she essentially used her main character as a vessel for her own political and social views and commentary. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm all for people being politically, socially aware and active and expressing that. But I was just far too aware the whole time that I was reading about Nisha Dolan's political views rather than kind of experiencing Ava's inner monologue. So again, it just took me out of the character and it didn't really work very well for me, I think. Then the final step for me was Sally Rooney, and I think the reason that it works so well for me is that Rooney is able to properly flesh out these characters without specifically relying on her own political, social commentary and things like that. And if you've read Conversations, you might disagree with that, because obviously there is a lot of talk in this book about political things and social things. But I think the reason that it works is that a lot of the political and social commentary takes place in conversations between the characters, right? So Bobby and Frances will be having a conversation about, I don't even know, Marxism, whatever. But it won't be taking place within Frances' own mind, and that's the perspective from which we're reading. And so it doesn't really matter so much to me that the political conversations take place, because that's what happens in real life anyway. Whereas in Dolan's writing, a lot of the political stuff was happening within Ava's monologue, and that's the perspective from which we were reading. And so it just felt really kind of abstracted to me that she would be thinking so much about political things. It just didn't really resonate that much with me. And I think Rooney did it a lot better by putting most of that stuff in conversations. It just felt a lot more realistic and like a tangible thing that people would do. And I think what's really impressive about Sally Rooney is that she's still able to touch on contemporary Irish issues that young Irish women deal with, right? It's not that I'm saying that you have to completely ignore kind of all of this social and political commentary. You really don't. And I think Rooney does it really well, because she's still able to bring up these issues. For example, the whole debate around abortion is brought up in Conversations, and in fact it's brought up in all three of these works, right? But I think the only one that does it any justice, and does it in a way that's not just like shoehorning it in as a demonstration that these authors are socially aware and politically woke, is Rooney, because she actually relates it to the story properly, relates it to something that the character is going through. So my general point here is that I will despair a little bit if the direction that we're going in depicting young Irish women in literature written by young Irish women is the direction of specifically Flattery, but also kind of Dolan. And I would much prefer if we kept on the Rooney route. And I think the reason that I think that is because Flattery and Dolan gave away too much of the emotion of their characters in order to show just how despondent and displaced they are by, you know, being a millennial. And to me it just meant that I wasn't able to connect with their characters as much as I would have liked, and as much as I did with Rooney's. And yeah, that's pretty much my point. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now.